This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Joined now by Jeremy Plonk, Racing Across America's Wednesday regular, horseplayernow.com night school. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Seth. How are things?
Happy to have you on board. Things are very good here, and we'll check in with you and see how things were for you over the weekend. I know you talked about when we were in touch yesterday, a nice day as far as Indiana and their two big races, the Oaks and the Derby. We'll touch on that a little bit later on. I want to get some thoughts on some of the other stakes races as well prior to that, however. And before we even do that, I always like to recap what happened on Night School, the nice horseplayernow.com fan education situation on Tuesday nights, and last night, really a nice topic, overall topic covering the industry, really. It was a town hall meeting, included Steve Christ, Pat Cummings, Alan Foreman, Alicia Wintz-Hughes, David Loganati from Oaklawn, Mike Mulvihill talking about some of the TV programming on Fox Sports. Just give us a little overview of the town hall meeting Night School last night.
Yeah, and Alex Walter from the NTRA checked in a little bit and kind of gave us an update on the tax situation with the withholding taxes that the NTRA is trying to lobby with Congress. And as he mentioned, it's a long and tedious process that the forefathers didn't make our governments be fast because they didn't want a lot of change to happen. And so we're paying the price of that from 1776 on. And so that, it's going to take some time in order for some of those tax legislation laws to change. The federal withholding, of course, the 300-to-1 threshold is kind of an antiquated deal nowadays with the exotic wagers. So it was a good update on topics that are affecting the industry, ways to change the industry, and what we might have to do looking forward. I thought Alan Foreman had some very frank comments. He's the president of the Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association and a noted attorney in the Mid-Atlantic. And he said now more than ever, horsemen are realizing and willing to contort to the marketplace in that boutique meets are the way to go. They realize that fans want shorter race cards every day, and they want shorter race meets, and that's what interests them. And the horsemen who have long put their feet in the stand wanting to have longer race meets, stay at the same place, it's cheaper to run their operation, more stability for their family, they realize that the marketplace has changed now, and I think you're going to see some regional cooperation that Alan was pretty open with in saying that he sees some regional cooperation, especially in the Mid-Atlantic, coming in terms of scheduling. And so I thought those were some positive things that came out of last night's Night School. You can listen to the entire archive if you go inside the Night School chat box. It's on your page at capitalotb.com, at our page at horseplayernow.com, and more than 40 websites around the industry. If you just click on it and open that chat box up, the very first link in there says click here for the audio archive, and you can listen to the entire radio broadcast. We went overtime last night, usually a 90-minute Night School. We went 105 minutes, so we went 15 minutes over last night, but we had a great panel, and we wanted to keep everybody on.
Yeah, not surprising, again, talking about a panel of, really the folks you want to hear from the industry, and so to give all of them their just due, I could see where you go overtime. Press release that was sent out promoting last night's town hall meeting, also had a fall semester schedule, and the upcoming topics I think are very interesting. Next week, going to talk a little quarter horses. Then for me, a nice topic, identifying key races. Week after that, Breeders' Cup handicapping. So really a nice full schedule going out to December.
Yeah, we have 40 weeks throughout Night School. It goes from the first week of March through the beginning of December, and we're at week 32 in the books now. So we're down to the final 8 of 40, so that's only a fifth of the season left. But all of the archives are available for all 4 years. We've done 151, 152 Night Schools now. You can always go back and check out any of the archives free at any time. It's about educating the players and developing more players. And as Alex Waldrop said last night from the NTRA, programs like Night School are critical to the sustainability of racing long-term and educating fans because there's a steep learning curve, and it takes time to develop. It takes a lifetime to develop horse players, and we're in it for the long haul. We've been in it for 4+ years, and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and it's funny you put that out there because in between shows, we just had the handicapping show, and your colleague Brian Nadeau was on with Anthony Mormino, and as we passed, we were talking about the closing of Suffolk Downs and how there was so much press coverage, and we were kind of lamenting, where was the press all these years? Why did they show up on the closing day? And I think it was the Boston Globe had the article where they went around. There was a bunch of young people out there saying, gee, it's a good thing the place is closing. Otherwise, I might have been hooked. This is a fun day at the racetrack. And it just goes to show, boy, that the racing industry is hasn't worked out quite the formula yet for PR. So, as you say, fan education is what it's all about.
Well, you can get them out there with a concert. You can get them out there with a free giveaway, as your folks in Saratoga know all too well. But if you don't do something with them inside the gates, they're actually a drag on the industry than they are a plus, because the admission prices are so low or non-existent at most racetracks anymore. The track doesn't make any money off you coming through the turnstiles, but they have to pay for security. They have to pay for safe grounds. They have to pay for maintenance. The cleaning crews, everything like that to run a day at the races, not to mention all the purses and all. And if you don't put money through the tote system, there is no funding mechanism out there for the racetracks or the horsemen to make any money. So it's critical that you teach people how to bet, especially in this era of casinos around, because many of the racetracks, because of the casinos, had to drop their parking, drop their admission, and things like that to be competitive in the gambling place. Well, if they're not actually coming in and placing a gamble or a significant amount of gambling, $40, $50, $60 at least, and not just, coming out and maybe making, free show bets for $6, there's no way to make any money off of these folks. And if you don't teach them how to play, they'll have no incentive to come back, because no track can afford to run big promotions over and over and over and over again, hoping to lure new people. If you get the same people back for the promotions all the time, they're actually a drag on your bottom line and not a positive to it.
And I'll give you and your organization a little tip of the cap, because I remember a couple of seasons ago you had the horseplayernow.com tent out in the backyard at Saratoga, and I was amazed because they had a couple of betting windows out there. A, the number of money you guys pushed through the window, but B, the players out there made money.
Yeah, we had Travers Day 2 years ago, $15,000 bet through one window inside of a tent, and the return was like $15,800 at the end of the day. The total crowd of newbies who came through to bet for the day made $800 on a positive, cumulative, which is unbelievable that you would turn a profit amongst a large group of people, especially newcomers. And it worked so well that they didn't do it again.
I was amazed by that stat, though. And again, those are people that are going to come back to the track. As you say, that's the intrigue of it, and that's the fun of it. And that's not only what's going to benefit the industry, but that's a win-win because the fans love it, too.
Hey, we had Saturday, Sunday that weekend, and this is no lie. We had two young gentlemen who came, knew nothing at the beginning of the day. We taught them not just how to bet, but we understood. Look, you use our picks, that kind of deal like that, but let me tell you how to formulate bets to make the amount of money that you're trying to make, because it's easy to teach people how to bet. It's hard to teach them how to handicap. So we said, rely on our picks, but here are the strategies that you want to do, because these guys said, we want to make $500, And I said, look, that's not out of the question. Taught them how to do a trifecta key, take this horse, use 4 or 5 underneath. They both hit so well, they came back the next day with their girlfriend. So 2 became 3, and they came back the next day and said, we weren't going to come today, but we woke up in the morning. We couldn't stop talking about how great of a time we had yesterday. So I called my girlfriend, talked her out of what we were doing, and now the 3 of us came up here. And so that's kind of the multiplying that goes. When you win, it's infectious.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We saw that by a true example.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. All right, Jeremy, let's talk some racing from this past weekend. Another really good weekend of racing with a lot of Breeders' Cup implications. And we'll kick things off with the highlight of the highlight in this country. I think there were dual highlights. I think Trev over in France was pretty intriguing as well. But over here, it was Wise Dan in the Shadwell Turf Mile Grade 1. Keeneland's first $1 million race. As the title suggests, a mile on the turf. Seemed like it was 100% people impressed with the performance given the poor start. However, Mike Watchmaker made the case that once Seek
Again, he was
Seek Again, yeah, Seek Again had the trouble in the stretch, and maybe the field wasn't that strong. And I'll tell people when we watch the replay, keep your eyes on number 8, because I like Seek Again a little bit, and he does kind of shy away from going up the rail here. But I can't hold any of that against Wise Dan. When they come out of the gate, his head's turned. I said, oh, he's done. He's last, as we see here coming out of the gate. I still thought he had it all up against him at the 8th ball, but then he turns on, the Wise Dan afterburners, not just gets up and wins, he's running away from the field at the end.
Well, yeah, and I don't know how you want to pick this apart and how you want to pick this particular horse apart. I read the same thing you did, and I was waiting for the but, because, he started off complimentary. Oh, he hasn't run worse than second in 3 years, and you're waiting for that but and the comma, that that's going to go into why he's going to be critical of the horse. Why you're critical of this horse at this point after two-time Horse of the Year. He's in position possibly to be a three-time Horse of the Year. He's done it all. He's already won on the dirt. He's already won graded stakes. He's running the big races like the Foster and the Clark Handicap. It's not like he hasn't done it before. You know, if you want to go back to Zenyatta and say, oh, she only ever ran on synthetic, blah, 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 why they give a free pass to Shared Belief, who's never run a mile and a quarter, and until 2 weeks ago had never run on dirt, is beyond me. Everybody was ready to anoint him the champion of the world, even though, you know, he'd never been a significant distance of ground. And you know, I don't know, until through the Pacific Classic, he hadn't been to the mile and a quarter. Why the questions are for Wise Dan? Probably still, he's not fashionably bred. He's a gelding. He's from Kentucky, and he's not from New York or California, so he doesn't have the benefit of either one of those kind of fan bases behind it. Charlie Lopresti was a complete no-name trainer at the time when Wise Dan's ascension began. If this horse starts in New York under Bill Mott's care or Todd Pletcher's care, he's in the Hall of Fame already, and everybody's going nuts. The plaque is already engraved, and you guys are having a parade for him down Union Avenue up there. You know, so it's a little bit rags to riches, and anytime there's a rags to riches story, there's always going to be people wondering, but what? You know, how is this possible? How is this horse? He just is. You know, I mean, he just is that good, and it's amazing. He's so good. He scared off good Europeans in the Breeders' Cup last year. You know, they would line up to take a shot at this horse in the Breeders' Cup Mile most years. The fact that he won it the previous year, the next year, there were no top-notch Europeans ready to come on and take him on. He's simply in another league, and he's a really good horse, and he's a treat that we've had a chance to see him. Watchmaker, you know, I don't know where he's coming from on that. And again, I think if that would have been a New York horse, I know Mike's lean certainly is to the NYRA circuit on everything. And so, you know, I think if this horse was New York through and through, Watchmaker would be one of the first guys blowing his trumpet. But, you know, I can't knock a single thing Wise Dan has done. I mean, you just look back at that record and the resume, and the performance at Keeneland was very good. Look, if Seek, again, checking a little bit, this horse missed the start. I mean, it's not like he had a perfect trip and had a great run. And I'll tell you this, too, Seth. Horses did not close at Keeneland Friday or Saturday on the turf or on the dirt because there was a strong headwind that day in the stretch that was knocking down all the closers, and everybody was pretty much staying in place. You look at the other two turf races that day, Wire to Wire, No Nay Never, and Day at the Spa, a determined front runner who was sitting right off the leader the entire trip. Speed won all day Friday, it won all day Saturday until the wind changed a bit on Sunday where closers started to have a little bit more of a fair shot. So Wise Dan ran actually against the bias. I know there were only 3 turf races, but I'm telling you, that wind is important at Keeneland.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he was life and death. He was, as I say, he was pulling away at the end.
Yeah.
And something that obviously has been mentioned, but I think is kind of getting, you know, downplayed a little bit. He had that surgery, and you know,
right.
He had that surgery. He comes back from the surgery and just gets up over Optimizer up at Saratoga. And I think a lot of people were saying, oh, okay, maybe Wise Dan is on the downslope now. And I think he just validated, nope, he's still the same old Wise Dan with that performance on Saturday.
You know, the race up at Saratoga was interesting because he never got down on his belly and really stretched out. When you kind of see good turf milers, they have that daisy cutter acceleration and the legs are flipping out forward. You know the look I'm talking about. And in that race at Saratoga, he was just kind of upright the whole way. His head was up the whole way. And he just found a way to keep grinding and winning that race on heart. And you could tell he never really got down into his form and leveled off, as they say, leveled off and shot. Yet he still won, you know, and he won a grade 2 with Baruch off of, like you say, a colic surgery. And that was, you know, that was impressive on guts. And you could say, well, geez, is he going to kind of really get down and get after it here in the race at Keeneland? When he had to, he did. And you know, he made up the ground necessary. He looked dead to right at the top of the stretch at Keeneland. I don't think anybody thought he was going to win. Kurt Becker's voice was almost a little bit, you know, a little warbly, like Wise Dan, you know. It did not look like he was going to get there. It was reminiscent of Zenyatta in that way, that she looked defeated many times and kind of snatched, you know, victory from the jaws of defeat, and he had one of those kind of performances. I would guess third off the layoff in the Breeders' Cup, Lepresti's going to have him crank to run his absolute best race. It'll probably be his career finale, and Wise Dan's going to be awfully tough. Now the big question is, which race is he going to go in? I hope he's in the Classic, because I think he's got a really good shot. It would be historic. It would be, you know, and from a betting standpoint, it could save the second half of Breeders' Cup Day. Because if you're looking at Shared Belief at 3-5 or 4-5 in the Classic, and you're looking at Wise Dan at 3-5 in the Mile, those are the last two races on the card at the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah.
You know, the way they're positioned on the card. Do you want to be sitting there on Breeders' Cup Championship Saturday with all those great prices and opportunities out there and looking at a potential $13 daily double in the last two races of the card? You know, for me as a gambler and just from a competition standpoint, the Mile was much more competitive if Wise Dan's out of there. Then it becomes a wide-open race. More Europeans want to come over, and it becomes a great race. And the Classic becomes just this unbelievable challenge and head-scratcher. Can Wise Dan stretch out to the 1.25 miles? You know, Shared Belief against these new horses that he hasn't faced before. Otherwise, if it's kind of a bunch of the same old, you've got Shared Belief against California Chrome, and I'm not so sure anybody really thinks California Chrome is rounding back to a big effort. We'll have to see on that.
Yeah, interesting. It will be very interesting to see as we approach the Breeders' Cup. All right, we had one champion kind of live up to his resume, and then on the weekend at Keeneland, we also had a potential, and again, with Breeders' Cup implications, a potential champion out there, Close Hatches, really running well in her division this year and setting up that rematch out in Southern California with Beholder. But Close Hatches, boy, it's an absolute head-scratcher on Sunday. We're going to watch the stretch run. Close Hatches, the number 2 horse, just throws out the anchor in the stretch. And the early fractions, yeah, got pushed a little by Ria Antonia, but Ria Antonia sticks on to run second. Close Hatches runs fourth. And again, those fractions just were not that testing. But Don't Tell Sophia, can't take anything away from her. She is an absolute hard knocker. Certainly proved that down at Oaklawn this winter with some nice performances. Last time out, won the Locust Grove at Churchill Downs, and she gets it done here. So not going to take anything away from a really nice racehorse, the number 5, Don't Tell Sophia. But boy, as I say, a head scratcher in the Spinster with Close Hatches.
Oh, just absolutely. I mean, this is one that I just didn't think would lose. We were doing our live chat at Keeneland.com and hosting, and I just thought she was a tap-in. But I'm a big homer for Don't Tell Sophia. My only daughter is Sophia, and she's our house horse. We root for her every time he runs, or every time she runs. But we didn't bet 5 cents on her Sunday. You know, a lot of people were texting me afterwards going, "Did you hit it? Did you hit it?" I'm like, why in the hell would I bet against Close Hatches in that spot? I mean, she just looked like, you know, even if you're rooting as a fan, it looked like Close Hatches was just too good for the field. And you know, the one question I have, and Steve Christ and I talked about this on the night school last night as he was one of our guests. You know, he was talking about it would be great to bring back the old American Championship Racing Series, which was a series of top handicap races from the beginning of the year through the end of the year with a point system. And I said, well, there's a cautionary tale to that. We tried to run a Breeders' Cup in June this year at Belmont Park. Naira threw out the carpet and said this is going to be the equivalent of the Breeders' Cup in June. Most of those horses are either retired now or tapped out and are over the top that ran on that big card on Belmont Day. Think about it. Palace Malice, retired. Princess of Silmar, retired. Close Hatches, is the shine off the apple now? Did she do too much early in the year? There are a lot of those type horses. California Chrome, obviously, you know, the Triple Crown had as much to do with that as any kind of Breeders' Cup connotation. But a lot of the big horses that we were expecting big things from in that card in June are not the headliners going into November now. It is very tough in today's day and age to keep a horse really sharp at the top of their game for 5 and 6 months, and much less an entire year. So Close Hatches, as great as she was at different times of this year, it is natural in today's day and age that these horses are going to lose something off their fastball at some point. And boy, when she did, she really did. Bill Mott is so conservative of a trainer, he's going to go through her with a fine-tooth comb. You know this. And you wonder, as bad as that performance was, finishing off the board against that field in the Spinster on Sunday, if there's something even tiny bit wrong with Close Hatches, she may not move on to the Breeders' Cup. I mean, that may not just be a loss. That may be a Breeders' Cup cancellation on her ticket out there. And so if that happens, now you're looking at Beholder, instead of having that great showdown, you know, where you get to the end of Friday in the distaff between two horses that could share money in the tote, you're looking at Beholder as a 3-5 favorite. A lot of the results this past weekend were not good for gamblers at the Breeders' Cup because it's leaving some heavy favorites in different divisions.
Yeah, great point. All right, one race that I think did have some intrigue added to it is the sprint potentially with Santa Anita Sprint Championship on the weekend, Grade 1 event, $300,000, 6 furlongs. And I wanted to get your thoughts here because this to me is absolutely intriguing. It was only a short field of 5, but you had Golden Sense, last year's winner of the Breeders' Cup Mile. You had Secret Circle, last year's winner of the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And then you had Rich Tapestry doing what I don't know if we've ever really seen this before, coming over and invading from Hong Kong. And it is going to be the number 2, Rich Tapestry, getting it done over Golden Sense second, Secret Circle third. Maybe more notable, Rich Tapestry had not run since April. So the number 2, Rich Tapestry, gets it done. And as I say, I think adds some real intrigue to the Breeders' Cup Sprint.
Oh, absolutely. This race suddenly became very intriguing because, say, Secret Circle comes back and runs another 107 and change like he did last year off the layoff in that prep going into the Breeders' Cup. What's he in the sprint then? You know, I mean, he's just dominant on his home track, the defending champ coming off a big effort. Now, all of a sudden, I was like, oh, this horse from Hong Kong wins. Is he going to be able to repeat that? Does this horse bounce second time off the plane? All those kind of questions like that. I think the sprint field has just ballooned. In recent years, the sprint hasn't been that deep of a race, surprisingly, as it used to be. You know, you used to always just bank on 12 to 14 in the sprint, and you knew it was going to be a wide-open crapshoot. In recent years, it's been a lot of 9s and 10s in the sprint. I think you're back to a full field in the sprint because this is going to open some eyes to people around the country saying, we've got a shot here. You know, we've got a shot here because they're not going to trust the Hong Kong horse as being dominant. Simply put, we don't know enough about him. I didn't give the horse a snowball's chance at Santa Anita in that race last time, and he won it. And so, you know, I don't know enough about these kind of horses, especially the Asian horses, you know. I follow a little bit of Australian racing here and there. The big English races, you can read a lot of the press about. You get a sense or a feel about who the better horses are. You can watch some replays, and you can watch replays of the horse from Hong Kong as well. But really, do you have any idea what they were running against? I don't, and I follow the game every day. So horses like that, to me, are an automatic. You just draw a line through them. You know, a couple horses came over from Japan in the past for the Breeders' Cup, Taiki Blizzard and some other names that don't come to mind right away. But I just draw a line through them right away because I'm like, why would I waste my time trying to figure these horses out? Because I don't know what I'm looking at. You know, I don't know how to evaluate it. It might look like a nice car, but I have no idea once I pop the hood what the engine is, you know, and so I have no idea how to evaluate those kind of horses. And after winning that race in Santa Anita, the price on this horse now is going to be shorter than you would probably want to take, and you still don't really know. You know that race was awfully impressive, but you don't know, does this horse typically, can he come back off a big effort? You know, how difficult were things on him physically? He will be a very interesting horse to follow in the training leading up to the Breeders' Cup Sprint. If he's training sensational, all the clockers are going gaga over him, then you know we probably have ourselves an international juggernaut that the Americans may not be able to beat. You know, and you would assume Baffert's going to have Secret Circle a little bit tighter and ready to go then for $2 million versus for the couple 100,000 they were running for in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship. So the sprint got a whole lot more interesting. That's one of the races that really did pick up intrigue. And I think what also happened there, though, a little bit of a negative, Golden Sense didn't run well enough for me to come back in the sprint. Golden Sense will go back to the dirt mile and defend his title. He didn't look like a dominant sprinter in that race. The sprint's worth twice as much as the dirt mile. So you say, well, why would they leave the dirt mile to run in the sprint? Well, the reason being it's worth twice as much money. And so if he won that Santa Anita Sprint Championship and looked great, there would be no reason in the world to go back to the dirt mile and run for less money. Now you've got Golden Sense going back to the dirt mile almost assuredly out of this race. Who knows who's going to train him with Doug O'Neill band from the Breeders' Cup. But now you have another short price favorite. Golden Sense is going to be, I mean, I don't know who you're going to send from the East. You know, a lot of the Kelso horses they were talking about not coming to the Breeders' Cup and such. You know, I'm not sure who's going to show up in a dirt mile that's going to keep Golden Sense from being even money.
All right, Jeremy, got to move on, and I'm going to skip over the Ring Weekend races. We only got about a minute left, but I wanted to get some opinions from you on the Indiana Derby. We're going to talk with Rachel McLaughlin from Indiana Grand in just a second. But as we got contacted yesterday, I noted you said you did pretty well on the Indiana Oaks and the Indiana Derby. Indiana Derby East Hall wins at 16-1. Really, the only thing on the resume was that July win in the Ohio Derby. So I want a little insight into what you saw in East Hall.
Pace makes the race, and there was a ton of speed in that race. He was the only confirmed closer in there. his last race he ran into trouble down at Louisiana Downs, and he probably would have run a little bit better. But that was a big speed track that day where Vickers in Trouble was not going to get beat the way he ran through the wind. So East Hall was the pace makes the race and the value play. When you have a horse like a Treaties, you know he's going to get overbet. The old rule in racing is never bet a horse to do something he's never been asked to do. That's not true. I don't believe in that. But you never ask a horse to do something he hasn't done before at a short price. That's an axiom you never take. I mean, if a horse is stretching out for the first time and they're going to give you 8-1 on him, then by all means jump in if you think this horse has it in their ceiling to step up and handle such a new challenge. But a horse like a Treaties at odds on, who had never traveled away from Gulfstream, had never been around 2 turns, going against Graded Stakes Company for the first time, he was a bet against. If you get beat by him and he pays, $5, big deal. You just say that's fine. And so, his style was speed. Vickers in Trouble is a one-way animal who can't pass horses. He's got to go to the front. It was strictly a pace play, and the horse came along and got it done. And typically, if you're going to get long shots, you're going to get long shots with closers. People bet speed. So you can usually get a better price betting a closer, but in a closer, you have to have a pace set up. If you don't have a pace set up, your closer's going to be losing money most times.
Yeah, nice call there. And we watched the stretch run, and East Hall did make a nice closing effort to get Vickers in Trouble. Looked pretty good at the top of the stretch, but couldn't hold on. All right, Jeremy, got to wrap things up. But as always, we appreciate the visit. Remind people every Tuesday night school. You can also go over to horseplayernow.com and check out the archives for night school. As always, Jeremy, we appreciate the visit. We'll talk to you next week.